tapestry weaves together the threads of our struggles and doubts, curiosities, our faith, our joys and hopes to create meaningful conversations that matter. You know those late night conversations that go unexpectedly deep? That's what we want to capture with the Tapestry Podcast. And we want everyone to jump in the conversation. Because when we are heard and valued, we can begin to believe we are loved. Welcome to the Tapestry Podcast.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Tapestry Podcast. We've been talking about this question, how rich is too rich? And what are the problems with wealth and what are the spiritual implications? We kind of touched on this idea of, can there be an ethical billionaire? And so we've been talking about that. And in this episode, we're going to touch a little bit more on kind of faith traditions and what they have to say about wealth and about possessions and stuff like that. And I'm here with my friend Mwangi.
What's up?
And my friend Mikayla.
Hello.
And we're just going to dive in. I'd love to talk about, we come from a Christian perspective, so we'll talk about Jesus. If you guys have any insights into other spiritualities or religions, it'd be cool to kind of touch on those too if you've got some thoughts. So before I dive in with my thoughts, you guys got anything you want to start with?
I know that other religions, such as like Buddhism and Judaism, really support the idea of giving back to your community and giving, distributing that wealth within your own self to give it to other people. And it's more worth it for the people within those types of, within that religion to sort of give openly rather than choose where it goes or have another organization choose where it goes for them. I think it's more down to the individual and what the individual thinks for those kinds of situations.
Yeah, that's true for Islam as well. One of the 5 pillars of Islam is charity. And so giving, it's actually one of the, if there's 5 pillars, that's 20%, man. That's like a big part of the whole thing. And
I do know that other places will take a tithe of some kind from your income and then distribute that amongst other places of wealth. Or not wealth, sorry, that was the wrong word. Other places of need, like into certain other types of demographics or people.
Yeah,
I think for me, if you look at the Bible, I don't think it necessarily... Yes, there's this idea of what money can do, but Moses was propped up to go to... he started somewhere and then he ended up in a palace, right? Joseph started in the pit and then he's in control of all these grains in this Egyptian empire. Mm-hmm. It's not the wealth, it's what you do with it. But at the same time, it doesn't ignore the fact that if you're in a wealthy spot, you have advantage. Joseph had servants. If he's that close to the Pharaoh, he has servants. He has people cleaning his where he's like. So it's not necessarily ignoring or sort of like, even, I'll be honest, like shunning where you're at. It's trying to figure out with where you're at, what do you do with it? Right? To Mikayla's point in the previous 2 episodes, if I win the lottery, this is what I want to do. So I really don't think it's about the wealth. It's about what you get. Because whether you get $100 million or you get a $10,000 check, how you act with that is who you are, right? At the end of the day, right? So it's not the amount there's zero. It's just like who you are. And I've heard a phrase before. I don't know what the origin is. Is something like, like money will show who people really are, right? Because once people get money, then you start seeing what their personality is sometimes.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not saying I've lived life in such a way that Joseph and I've gone from this thing to this thing, but generally, let's also, I'm not saying you guys are doing it, but let's not also cast necessarily that wealthy people are in a certain way, because the average type of car the millionaires drive is a Honda Accord, right? So if you look at America and you said millionaires and the cars, it's a Honda Accord. It's not a Ferrari, it's not a McLaren. I'm not saying that people don't do that, but that's what it is. So what does that mean? When we're talking about Bezos, this doesn't justify him. Like, that dude drove a 2 to a Honda Accord for a long time while he was a billionaire at Amazon. Again, I'm not measuring that, saying he's such a good dude. I'm not saying that, right? But I remember seeing the 60 Minutes thing where it's just like, why are you driving a 2 to a Honda Accord? He's like, well, it's just, in his mentality, in wealth building, it's a car to get me to work so I can build more wealth. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't build wealth by having a 10 speaker stereo. He's just like, I need to just get to work. Zuckerberg was the same thing, right? He drove, I think he drives like I forget what he drives, but it's like, again, I'm not justifying or saying that because you drive a cheap car you're better. But my point there is just that perhaps what we see in society as who are wealthy, we don't see the people on the down low that are making a difference, because some of them don't want their names out there, right? Some of them are, again, just on the down low, just saying like, when I pass away, I just want my money to be given to blah, and I don't know, anonymously. I don't need my name out there, right? So there are different types of wealth there too.
Well, yeah, and in a recent episode, Mikayla, you mentioned the idea of money being the root of all evil, and I said, I think the Bible verse is actually the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and I did look it up, and it is 1 Timothy 6:10, and it's, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It's through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs, it goes on to say. And I think there is something to that, right? There's something about not just having the money, but like loving the money, or loving maybe even like the status that it brings, or maybe the power or influence that it brings. Those are different things. Like you said, Mwangi, like, what do you do with it? And I would even add, what does it do to you? Right? Because you also said, money, like, it shows out, right? Like, it shows who a person really is. It's a little bit like what alcohol does to some people, right? Like, they get a few drinks into them, and if like they're kind of a mean person at root, like, they get meaner. If they're kind of like a silly, goofy person in their nature, like, they kind of get sillier and goofier. I think money can kind of do the same thing. You almost get drunk. You've actually heard of, like, being drunk on money, right? So I think that's true too, that there's something about money that can corrupt us, and that's not something to take lightly. It doesn't mean that everyone who has money is corrupted, but it can be a danger for any of us. And it's not an amount in that case. It's a focus. Like, if it's the focus of your life, I think that can be pretty spiritually dangerous.
I also think that if you use it in a positive way, it can also be, like, money can be used positively. We see it in places where people get thousands of donations in order to help out, get with medical care. Or we see it, I mean, with CSU, they do, whenever they win games, athletically or otherwise, they do get a certain sum of money, and most of the time they will take that money and give it back to the community in some way. They will improve a road that's been just full of potholes and cracks and everything, or they'll take an older building, like on campus or something, that has some concerns with the foundation or something like that, and they'll redo it and make it better. But they will take that money and put it back into the community that they get it from. Like, they have a food bank truck that'll visit campus and other parts of Fort Collins regularly, because CSU has so much money. They understand that they should give it back to the community that got them to this point in the first place. So I think that gratitude with money can make someone a little less evil, as long as or not evil as per se, but can help out with the money being greedy, or the root of, not the love of money being the root of all problems, but the love of being gracious with that money can create a positive change in those people. Like wanting to continue to give out that money to people, or even learning how to better distribute it against or to other people, so that other people can get the resources, the help, the things that they need. So long as you are connected to that community. I think that's a big part of it, though. You have to have some type of gratitude towards your community in order to be willing to give back to it.
But I don't want them charging students high tuition to give that to community. The students are the community, right? So I'm not picking on CSU necessarily, but college tuition is ridiculous. So if you tell me, I'm not countering what you're saying, but if you tell me you're going to charge a kid $40,000 a year for a degree, and then tell me you're going into a food bank, and that student is going to struggle to go to your school, it's counteractive.
No, I agree.
The students are the
That's
community,
why they
right?
have that. Yeah, they are in the community, and I think that they should offer more places and opportunities for them to take out that amount of money. But that's why CSU has so many grants, so many scholarships, so many other opportunities for those students too. And like with that food bank and everything I was telling you about, they take it off campus too. They'll take it to other places in the community that people need food in areas, or they will take it through like more homeless areas, if that makes sense. Like where more homeless people or more low income families live, even things like that. But I will see that food truck parked or food bank truck parked in multiple places, because the students are one part of the community, but we aren't the whole, if that makes sense. Yeah. So they can change that tuition price. It would be nice if they changed the tuition price to like $13 a class, but then they're discounting some people who have done all of the work to get those 10 years of education to become my teacher, almost, to become those professors and everything. And those professors also, they get a good amount of money, and they give it back to students by giving them research opportunities, other ways to like further their education, further their career, further anything that they need. I just see a lot of them will give. I think it's all got to do with the gratitude that you can give back to people, because those professors are usually 10,000 times happy to help out with students.
What do you think, Mike? I would say that I agree with some of what you're saying, but in sitting in an advisory board for graduate schools, professors are grossly underpaid given the amount of revenue that universities generate. Grossly underpaid.
It's all those
for the amount of right. So, and they are very generous with their time, and essentially they love what they do. That's why they stick to it. But with what the university is getting per student, that money does not go to professors. It goes to stadiums and things like that.
Not all of it, though,
Not all of it,
but it does go to the professors and
disproportionately,
the students and the admin and all of that.
I think
for how much education they have,
I think for disproportionately, because, right, I have some friends who are professors. They're like, I need to find income in the summertime, right? Because like I'm being paid like $40,000, right? So I need to write a certain grant. And if I get a grant for $10,000, the university takes half of that off the bat, right? So I think the university generates money, and I think given the university and how they want to be philanthropic, they get to do that. But I think the professors are partially in the same boat as the students. They're not making enough money, they're struggling, and they're trying to find various sources of income. Anyone more different than teachers, right? Elementary school teachers or high school teachers. We just the whole education system is kind of jacked up in our country, in how those educators are trying to make ends meet in some sense, while also disproportionately the amount of stress that they have is very high, right?
I mean, I think it goes to show kind of what our values are as a society, right?
Yes,
we value people who can generate a business or entertainment or those kinds of things, and less so the people who teach those people how to do those things. Like high school basketball coaches aren't making that much money, but the kid who makes it to the NBA because of that coach makes plenty. And we could probably do a whole episode on that, but like, I think this speaks to a spiritual thing, that we often get our priorities mixed, right? That the things that are really important, we actually don't spend a whole lot of our energy on. And the things that are massively important, maybe I'm switching it up. The things that are really, really important, we don't spend a lot of energy on. And the things that are totally frivolous and silly, we spend a lot of our time and energy on, whether it's like scrolling on the internet or, collecting something that isn't going to help anybody except for maybe give us a little pleasure. And I'm not knocking people who spend time on social media. I'm not knocking collections, but, sometimes it's a disproportionate
the
amount.
numbers it's truth, right? So from a sports perspective, yes, athletes are rewarded more, and it's not the athlete's fault; it's our fault. We are willing to pay top dollar to go to certain games. We are willing to donate funds to build big stadiums. We are willing to blah 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 blah. Like whatever it is, it's us, right? Those people don't just wake up and say, "I want to be a millionaire sports athlete." We prop them up.
Yeah,
we do.
Well, and Mwangi, when you say we, you literally do mean we. Those of us who have, like, I've seen the Nuggets recently. I've seen the, I've gone to the Rockies recently. Yeah. Our local sports teams, and that's big. And yeah, I mean, these are big things. And we were talking about this question of like, can there be an ethical billionaire? And I think it's true for like. We see some sports figures who give back, and Mikayla, you were talking about even professors or other people in your community who give back. So I think probably yes, but like I think one interesting question is how much would a billionaire have to give away in order to be considered ethical?
It's kind of. I don't think it's correlated.
It's not an amount.
Because somebody can give away for selfish reasons.
Okay. Yeah.
I would agree. MrBeast is a person, a very popular YouTuber amongst younger people right now. And he's been getting a lot of heat, even though he takes most of his wealth, or like at least a good amount of the wealth that he accumulates and creates, and does give back to people. He has built like usable bathrooms in places where there aren't any. He's given back to the community in dozens of other ways. Thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, but he is still not necessarily viewed with the best light because his intentions with that money is only to get, sometimes can be only to get more fame, more views, more money.
More clicks,
which you could argue for him would be to get those people the help that they need through those clicks, those views, those money, that entertainment value. But then again, you don't see him with every video giving back to every single person, or even you don't even see him on every single video walking down a street giving every single homeless person a piece of food. That's not what all of his videos are about, though. Some of it and most of his videos are entertainment and meant to be entertaining. So I don't know necessarily if I'm not projecting my own opinions on him, but I don't know if he's necessarily doing it 100% out of the goodness of his heart, or whether or not it has some sort of give and take for him. Like, he can give back, but it also gives back to him in terms of getting him more engagement, more views, more money, which he uses to get how more people, you see what I mean? Like, he does good things with his money, but he can still be a selfish person by using that goodness as a way to flip it back on his own head and use it as an entertainment value to get that same amount of attention back. So I see both sides of it, because he does do good things in the community, but I don't know where it's coming from in his heart and soul, if that makes sense.
And two, like what you said, but two, even part of the giving back, it doesn't have to be monetary. It is monetarily, but how do you teach people to become MrBeast? Like, how do you teach people? Not necessarily I'm trying to say be what, but like, how do you, coming back to Dave Ramsey, right? How do you teach people to think about money so that, given your situation, or if you look in the future, you're securing your financial future by thinking about it in a certain way, right? So part of it is, yes, I can write a check, but the other thing is like, hey, like if you thought this way, if you, if you have a talent, perhaps like start that as a side hustle and it may be extra income. I don't know what it is, but the check is important. It makes a difference, but really like instilling that knowledge is also really key, right? Because if I give you $100,000, you're going to use $100,000. But if I teach you how to use, right, this is biblical, right? If I teach you how to use that $100,000 to turn it into $1 million, and then take the $1 million to turn it into $10 million, like that becomes right. And so this is my understanding of the difference between being rich and wealthy. Being rich means you have a lot of money. Being wealthy means you have impact.
Ooh, I like that. Mm-hmm. I like that.
And I could be totally wrong in that, but to me, when I said that I'm rich, I have money. When you're wealthy, it's this idea of like, my kids don't have to worry about nothing, right? And their cousins or whatever. Like it's this huge meteor. It's got density, right? It's wealth, right? Not rich, wealth. Wealth is like generational, right? And that kind of stuff is just like, it's super impactful, right? In many ways.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back to something Mikayla said a minute ago about MrBeast, and like, I think you're kind of questioning intentions, right? Like if you're only giving in order to like get some more attention on you and get more clicks or whatever, like maybe that's not so good. And it reminded me of a Bible verse where Jesus is talking, it's in the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, "But when you give to the needy, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving can be in secret." It's like this idea that you shouldn't be even letting yourself know what you're doing. Like, be that secret about it. That way, like, you're not getting any other reward other than just giving it away. God knows you're doing it. Nobody else needs to know. And so I think it's right or natural, or maybe even biblical, to be skeptical about people who are showy about giving. Because I think that might say something about motivations, right? Like, are we giving because we really want to help, or because there's this, like, we get something out of it too? And I think that's also always going to be problematic. Like, it's always going to be hard. Like, the idea of altruism, of doing something that's completely selfless, right? Like doing something that's only for someone else that doesn't have any benefit for you, almost seems impossible, because you're probably at least going to feel good about it, right? But maybe then you'll feel bad about feeling good about it, right? And so it's like this vicious cycle of like maybe I'm not really giving like I should be giving. And I think that's hard, and I think that's part of what makes giving a challenge, and but also what makes it important spiritually, like to learn to be able to do it without expecting something back. So it's not a reciprocal relationship, I think, can be important. Yeah, I
have a counter to that, right? So I understand that I can give once I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So I'm not.
We're assuming that.
I shouldn't say that. I'm not counting what you're saying, but so when I, in looking at startups, and as I get coached about startups, if you went to Shark Tank and you're like, yep, I just want to build a business that gives. Well, that's not a business.
Mm-hmm.
A business has to make money, right? So I'm just trying to say, like, at the end of the day, if I build a business, it has to make money. And if I'm trying to raise investors will say, wait a minute, I'm not investing in a charity. If you want to build a charity, go build a charity. If you want to build a business, it has to make money. That's what you're going to be valued upon, right? So part of this, sometimes it's like this duality of, there's this part of me that's like, no, I need to make money. I have to generate money. And if it's not making money, it's not going to be good. Then I can also then say, now that I've made money, I can choose to be generous, right? And sometimes, and both.
But why can't you be generous all along the way?
You can be. So what I'm saying, you can be generous all along the way, but it's not that's what I'm saying. It's not a separation necessarily, but maybe what I'm trying to say is like it's a reality. It's a reality, right? You can want to be charitable, but you have to have the money to be charitable.
Yeah, but
and I'm not saying money is the only way to
percentages.
be charitable. I'm not saying money is the only way to be charitable.
No.
But in this sense, we're talking about wealth, right? And I'm not saying
Right.
you want to build wealth to be charitable, but I think there's a reality where too, like, okay, I have to have something to give if it's monetary, not necessarily my sweat or my blood, but this, right?
Yeah. So when they've done studies on this, like by percentage, people who make less money give a greater proportion of their income away. So like folks even close to the poverty line give a bigger percentage. It's not a bigger dollar figure, but a bigger percentage of what they have, they give away. They're more generous by proportion. I think that says something about kind of when you have the thing, you all of a sudden want to hold on to it more. Maybe you're even, like we talked about in a previous episode, like you're farther away from those who really need. You like actually don't even know any poor people. And I think that's interesting. And sometimes maybe some of us do wait until we have enough to give away. But I think that actually is a worthy goal though. Like if you want to make more, be more successful financially speaking, in order to be more generous, I think that's fantastic.
Because I think both can. I mean, there's faith-based organizations, you like Chick-fil-A or whatever, right? Like it's gargantuan, right? That people say that's a faith-based business, right? That also gives. I think all I'm saying is like those can work in parallel, right? Those can work in parallel at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's not either or the dollar necessarily isn't the way you give, but I would say that when we started in the first episode, coming back to even like what I need to survive, right? That's a fundamental thing. And then yes, if I have a business that, I want to open a pet sitting business or something like that, like fundamentally you got to pay your bills, right?
Yep.
Just got to pay your bills first, right? And then, right, get there, right? We'll ask Heidi about that, right, at some point, like as a business owner, like what that feels like and like what, right, how she acts out her faith and her charity as a business owner and what it means. You guys are on TV all the time about, right, adopting dogs and stuff like that. There's different ways of doing it.
We are on TV.
Money.
Yeah.
You guys are celebrities.
Listener, viewer, for those who don't know, Heidi is my wife. If you haven't seen other episodes with her in it. And she's actually in the room right now, but not on camera.
She's hiding from the paparazzi. She's famous.
She's hiding from the paparazzi. As I've been thinking about this, and I've been thinking about kind of the spiritual dangers around money and around too much wealth, I'm of course always going to be kind of going back to Jesus and what Jesus said about money. And Jesus talked about money more than heaven, more than he talked about hell, more than he talked about like almost anything else. And I'm actually preparing for a sermon this coming Sunday. So, if you're somebody who's connected to Broomfield UMC, you might know what I'm talking about because this will come out some weeks after that. And, be talking, our series right now is called Here and Now. We're talking about kind of being present with God. And I'll be talking about kind of how we tend to hold on to things. And the verse that we're using is Matthew chapter 6, it's 25 to 34, where he talks about how, consider the birds, right? Like they don't like toil. They don't till the ground to feed themselves, but God makes sure they have enough. Consider the flowers. They don't make clothing, but they're more beautifully dressed than anybody. And Jesus says, and you're more important than birds and flowers to God. And so God's going to take care of you. And so don't worry about that stuff. And just before that, he's talking about, how kind of where we put our resources, that's where our heart ends up. A lot of times we switch it around. Like we think that Jesus said, where your heart is, there your treasure will be also. Like that, like the things you love, you'll put money into it. And I think that's true to some degree. But he actually said, where you put your resources, where you put your money, that's where your heart is. Like that's, and I think you'll probably see it. Like if you look around your house and the stuff that you've purchased, you know, like, or if you look at your bank statements and see what you spend money on, it's
or
like,
your
oh
time.
yeah,
Like your time is really fine.
your time too.
Where you spend, who you spend your time with. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's these verses that I was just talking about also reminded me of something in Luke. I think it's Luke 25. I can't remember for sure. It's this verse, and maybe you guys remember it. It's where Jesus tells us parable about a rich man. Like it's a certain rich man had like a really good harvest, and it was so much grain that it wouldn't fit in his barns. So he said, I know, I'll tear down the barns I've got and I'll build even bigger barns, and then I can store all my stuff. And Jesus says, or God says, like in the parable, like, you fool, like you're going to die tonight. And then who gets all your stuff? Kind of like what you're talking about with succession, right? Like then who gets your stuff? And it's not clear in the Bible verse whether or not like it just so happens that the guy is going to die and God knows it, or that like God's like, no. Like that's evil. You do not. That is for giving away. I gave you this bounty so that you can give it away. And I think there is a tradition in Judaism, starting with Abraham, and certainly in Christianity, continuing, you know, with Jesus, of the idea that any blessing we have isn't for us. It's to be a blessing to others. That, it says it in the Old Testament a lot, like the reason that they had this thing called Jubilee, where they would give back, like forgive debts and give back land to where it goes. Like you can never permanently own the land, it says in the Old Testament, because it belongs to God. It's not yours to begin with. And so this whole idea of like, none of it's really ours, and anything that we're blessed with should be used to bless other people is something that recurs again and again and again in scripture. But we're not, like, I'm not that great at it. Like I kind of want to keep the stuff because I like my stuff and I want to hold on to it. And I kind of like having enough money to buy all the things, all the avocados that I want.
Or fixing your roof if it leaks, or like, I'm just saying,
having
right?
enough to be able to do that.
Yeah. It's necessary. So I think, you know, part of what we're saying is like, we've talked about sort of wealth from the perspective of, yes, the richest people in the world. We've talked about wealth where maybe somebody can look at us and say, oh my God, you know, oh my goodness, you're wealthy, right? Despite where you're at. But still, we're human beings, right? So even if I don't have a reference like you're talking about, Mike, from a chapter in Luke, and I'm an atheist or something, at the end of the day, like, there's something in us human beings that wants to feel comfortable and have our needs met. That's the first thing, and then there's everything else after that, right? All the superficial stuff and things like that. But if we could just figure out the first part, let's just get everybody's needs met. Like we would achieve more than we have in any point in human history. So let's just get there.
Yeah.
100%. Well, because if you fulfill a person's basic needs, they can advance to other things that are a little bit more important. You said that, and I immediately thought of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
If we, as a whole, could get everybody's basic needs taken care of, us as a society could just grow exponentially upwards because we could explore other avenues of interests.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll leave us with a thought from the great theologian Wayne Coyne, lead singer of the Flaming Lips. It's not really a theologian. They've got that song, the Yeah, Yeah, Yeah song, With All Your Power. They've got one lyric in that. I got to see them in concert last year. It was so good. And it struck me as I was listening to their song. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is such like an anthem. And one of the lines is, if you could make everybody poor just so you could be rich, would you do it? And I think for a lot of us, the answer is, yeah. Like, we would totally do that. But he asks the question, like, what will you do with all your power? What would you do? What would you do with all your power? What are you going to do with all your power? And I think the supposition is that actually we all do have power. And whether that's because we've got a lot of money or influence or whatever, but we all have some power. And so I guess that's what I would leave us with is, we all have some amount of resources. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with all your power, with all your resources? Jesus has some thoughts on that. Buddhism certainly talks about releasing, having detachment from our material possessions. We know that Islam and Judaism have strong leanings toward charity and giving to others. So, yeah, what are you going to do, listener? What are you going to do, viewer, with what you've got? I think that's it for this episode. We'll see you next time. I think we'll be talking about politics. Yeah. All right, bye, everybody. Yeah. Bye.
Take care. Be good.
Bye.
The Tapestry Podcast is produced by Stephen Bailey. Original music was scored by Taylor Martin. Special thanks to Lauren Richmond Jr. and Resonate Media. You can learn more about Tapestry and join the conversation on our Discord channel at tapestrytalk.org. Thanks for joining us.